Okay, welcome to video 1 in the Codex CLI Mastery series. I'm going to record a bunch of videos on the different features within Codex CLI so that you can become a pro and get the most out of Codex. In this first video, what I'm going to do is run through the setup and quick start guide. So I'm going to show you how to install Codex CLI, how to set up and initiate a session by connecting your ChatGPT account. Then I'm going to go over 3 essential techniques that every Codex user needs to know. And then in future videos in this series, we're going to dive deeper into some of the other features and advanced techniques you can use to really unlock the power of Codex. So the first step is we need to install Codex CLI. So first of all, in order to do that, we need Node.js installed. If you haven't got Node installed, this is the command you need to run to install it. So I'll just enter that here into our terminal. I'll also include this command in the description below, so if you want to copy paste this into your terminal you can. I've already got Node installed, so what I'm going to do is run this command, which is node -- version. That will tell you what version of Node you have installed. So if you're not sure if you've got it installed or not, you can also just run this command and then it'll tell you whether it's installed or not. We'll hit enter on this command. We can see we're on version 24.2.0, so we do have it installed. Having this installed now allows us to use Node Package Manager to install Codex CLI. So we can also run npm -- version to just make sure that we do have npm installed. We can see we're on version 11.3.0, so now we can install Codex. Now I've already got Codex installed, but I will run the command anyway so that you know exactly what you need to run in order to install it. So what we want to do is run the following command. So you can see we're using npm install. We're using the global flag here, the G flag, so that we're installing Codex system-wide. And then at OpenAI /codex is the command to run. So we'll hit enter. As I said, I've already got Codex installed. It'll probably just update here. It says changed one package. We can then run Codex -- version. So again, if you think you've already installed Codex, or you just want to check to see what version you're on, or if it's installed, you can run this command. So I'll hit enter and we can see we have Codex CLI 0.46.0. So that means we're set up now. We've got Codex CLI installed and we're ready to start using it. You can also see that I am in my D drive projects folder, so it's important to navigate to whatever folder you want to work in before you do launch a new Codex session. So in this case, I'm in my projects folder. That's where I want to start working with Codex, so that's where I am. And now to initiate a Codex session, we just want to enter Codex. You'll likely see this message pop up. It says you are running Codex in your projects folder. Since this folder is not version controlled, we recommend requiring approval of all edits and commands. Then you have the option to either, number 1, allow Codex to work in this folder without asking for approval, or number 2, require approval of edits and commands. For this video, we're going to use option 2, to require approval of edits and commands. If you're just starting with Codex, or if you're working on any large code bases or important projects, I recommend starting with option 2 here. This is just a guardrail essentially so that Codex will ask you for approval before it does run any changes. So if you're worried about it potentially making mistakes, because it can, then that's a safe way to go about it. I'll show you how you can change the approval method. So if later on you want to switch to not require approval for edits, you can do that. But for now, we'll choose option 2 and we'll hit enter. And now you can see we are in a new Codex session. At the top here, we can see what version of Codex we're on. We can see the model that's currently in use and the directory that we're working in. You can see here we can also change the model using the model command. We're currently on GPT-5 Codex High. This is the most powerful model, but it takes longer to respond. If you're working on complex projects, that's the recommended way to go, and I've definitely found that the best results you get is using High. If you want to change it though, you can use the model command, and that's going to come up with the different options you have. If we choose Codex here, we then have the options low, medium, or high. Again, as mentioned, low, faster responses with limited reasoning. The medium model is dynamically adjusted based on the task. And then the third option, high, maximizes reasoning depth for complex or ambiguous problems. So again, high is recommended, so we'll hit enter there so that we're confirming we're using that model. Now, as mentioned in this video, we're going to run through some of the fundamentals you need to know when you're using Codex CLI. But first of all, we need to create a new directory for this demo video. And you can see here that this section is essentially a chat interface as if you're just using ChatGPT, so we can create any message in here and hit enter and Codex will respond. So what I'm going to do is ask Codex to create a new directory within our projects folder so that we can start to create files within that project for this demo video. So what I'll do here is I'll say create a new directory in the projects folder named Codex Demo Project. We can see here it's now asking for permission to run the command to create the new directory. So we'll hit enter, we've approved that, it's now been created. Now what I'm going to do is ask it to create a new skeleton project for a Next.js app. That way we've got some files in our folder that we can use to test Codex's knowledge. So I will say create a new Next.js app skeleton in the Codex demo project folder. So it should now run the command to create a new Next.js app project. We can see here it's asking for permission to create that new folder, so we'll say yes. We can see it has now finished installing a new Next.js skeleton. What I'm going to do now, just to make sure, is say show me the directory tree for Codex demo project. It should return a list of our directory to see and confirm that those files are in fact installed. And we can see here it has returned the demo project. We can see the files are now installed. So we started with an empty project. We asked it to install a new Next.js skeleton, and that's exactly what it's done here. That brings us to our first fundamental tip for using Codex CLI, and that is the AGENTS.md file. So this is the single biggest productivity boost for Codex. Think of it as permanent project memory. You can write conventions once and project instructions, and Codex will remember them forever and refer to them when it does complete tasks and run commands. So it essentially acts as onboarding documentation for Codex, so you can tell it what tech stack you're using, your coding conventions, any file structure preferences, and any project-specific rules. And then Codex is going to read that automatically every session. So you don't have to repeat yourself and set context at the start of every session. It will just use the agents.md file to establish that context at the beginning of every conversation you have. So to create a new agents.md file, we want to use the init command. But first of all, we just want to make sure that we're in the right project directory before we create this agents.md file. So remember that this will be created within the root folder of the directory that we're in. Even though we've just created a new demo project, recall that we're still in our projects folder. So if we scroll up the top here, we can see the directory that we're in is projects. So if we were to run the init command, that would create an agents.md file at the projects folder level. We don't want that. We want to create it within our new Next.js app demo project folder. So in order to do that, we need to change the directory that we're in. So what we want to do is cancel this current Codex session. So Control-C will exit the session. We can see we now get back to our Ubuntu terminal view. We can then just say change directory to Codex demo project. Now we're in the project that we want to work in and run commands in and create that agents.md file in. And then we can use Codex to initiate a new session within this project folder. So another tip here, make sure that you're in the project directory that you want to work in. And there's the quick and easy way to change directory if you do need to swap over to a new directory that you create. We'll hit Codex. We again get that same warning as before to say what approval method do you want. We want to ask for approval still, so we'll say number 2. And we can see at the top here, we're back in Codex, and we are now in the Codex demo project directory. Now we can run the init command to create a new agents.md file. So it's now completed that task. We can press enter to officially create that file. I'm also going to show you how you can make changes to this file. So if you want to either overwrite this completely with your own project context or just make updates and additions, you can do that directly here within Codex. So for this example, let's just say to Codex the following: add to agents.md file naming conventions. So this is additional context. So if you do want to add anything like this, you can just do it this way. So we'll press enter and that will now update the file with this added in. We can see it's now asking to make the update. If we hit yes to proceed, we can see here it has now finished that task and it says the file naming rules have been added to the contributor guide. We can now say show me the full contents. So again, we just want to confirm that it's been updated. If you ever want to have a look at whatever code Codex has written, you can use that command and just see the full contents of any files. We can see here it's now added the file naming conventions here, so that has successfully updated the agents.md file. And now, as mentioned, that is your project context and a really important first step when you do set up a new Codex project. The next tip I'm going to talk about is the approvals command. So when we first initiated this session, you'll recall that we chose option 2 to require permission to run commands and edit files. We can also switch over to agent full access mode, which then allows Codex to work autonomously without needing permission to execute commands or create new files. So if you're working on a project where you trust Codex to be able to execute those tasks without needing your approval, and you want it to do that so that it's a bit more hands-off and you can just let it build, then we need to change the approval mode. To do that, we can use the approvals command here. So you can see it's shown below. It says choose what Codex can do without approval. We can see we've now got read only. Codex can read files and answer questions. It requires approval to make edits, run commands, or access network. That's the mode we're currently using. We've then got auto approval mode. So Codex can read files, make edits, run commands in the workspace. Codex requires approval to work outside the workspace or access network. And then we've got full access. Codex can read files, make edits, run commands with network access without approval. Exercise caution. So that's an important piece of information here. Exercise caution if you are using full access mode, because as it says here, it can access the network. It could make changes outside of this directory that we're working in, so that's a really important consideration. You don't want it to make changes that could break something else. So just be really careful if you are going to use full access mode. Make sure that you are comfortable with the potential risks that come with that. For this demo though, we'll just use auto mode because we're just going to work within this directory. So we can allow it to use auto mode and it will therefore execute commands and make edits within this project without needing permission. So we'll hit enter and we're now on auto mode. Now what I'm going to do is just give Codex a brief task to complete, and we can see how it will complete this task without asking for approval. So I'm going to say here, create a basic landing page that says hello world with centered text and a gradient background using Tailwind. We'll hit enter there and it should now execute this task without me needing to give permission. It will just go ahead and build that page. You can see the thought process here of what tasks it is executing as it works. We can see it's created the code, so we can see what changes it's making. And now it's finished. So it says it's replaced the default Next.js template with a minimal landing page. It now renders a full screen gradient background and centers a hello world heading using Tailwind utilities. Again, because we're on auto mode here, you can see that it didn't ask me for permission to make edits to that file. It just went ahead and did it. So that's the advantage of auto mode, but again, comes with risk because it will change code and run commands without permission. So there is that potential for a mistake to be made, so keep that in mind. And here is our landing page. That is exactly what we asked for in our prompt. Hello world, centered text and a gradient background. So it has successfully built that landing page on auto mode. It didn't ask for permission, it just went ahead and built this page. So that's a success. We'll now jump back to Codex CLI. The next tip I want to show you is the status command. So if we enter /status, we can see here that will show the current session configuration and token usage. If we hit enter, we can see here, this is everything about our current session. So we can see the model we're using. So GPT-5 Codex, reasoning high. We can see what directory we're in. We can see the approval mode that we're currently using. We can see that the agents.md file is in use. We can also see context window. So this is referring to the context of the current conversation we're having within CLI. We've got a lot left, as you can see. Once it does reach that limit, it will just compact the conversation and start again. The main thing I wanted to mention here regarding the importance of using the status command is to see your token limits for Codex usage. So we can see here we've got a 5-hour limit and a weekly limit. We can see with what we've done so far, our 5-hour limit we've used 6%. For the weekly limit we've used 2%. So something to keep in mind, and that status command is how you can just quickly check your usage limits to see how you're going in terms of whether you're going to hit that limit or not, and when it resets. So that brings us to the end of the setup and quick start video for Codex CLI. Hopefully you found that valuable. This is the first video in a series, so make sure you subscribe if you want to see more. In future videos we're going to deep dive into some advanced AGENTS.md patterns, custom slash commands, and MCP integration plus more. So if you're using Codex CLI, you want to learn more about how you can use those advanced features to get more out of it, make sure you subscribe, and thanks for watching.